Well, as it turns out, that was a pretty good place to break it last time, because what happened was I went through and started using the computer program, but didn't switch the screen over to the computer, so you just sort of saw a blank screen. So anyway, we're going to take care of it here. Last time that we on the last video, we had this set of data, and there's where I want to be. What we had were these values, and so now we're going to we calculated the chi-square and we got 58 or something like that. What we're going to do is we're going to take those values and we're going to plug them into a chi-square calculator. And you can get these on the internet. I mean, just do a look for chi-square calculator, and there's a lot of them out there. So I did one, and this is what we have. We'll go through and just put in these values. 56, 7. If you're not able to see that, then hopefully you at least get the idea of what's going on here. And 34, and then I'm going to click on the calculate button down here. And the chi-square value is right here. It's 57.983. The degrees of freedom is 1. Remember, we calculate the degrees of freedom by the number of rows minus 1 times the number of columns minus 1. So it's 2 minus 1 times 2 minus 1 is 1 times 1 will give me a 1. It gives me a p-value here of 0, which means it has a 0% chance of happening randomly. It's probably 0.00000001 or something like that. Yates chi-square is pretty close there. So that's particular situation. We also, earlier in the discussion, we had the set of data that where we'd gone through and done the boots and shoes and stuff like that for the males, and then for the females here. And so now let's plug those in to our table that we have here. At 6, 17, this is a whole lot easier than going through and doing these calculations by hand. And there's hundreds of programs out there. So we've got those in, and then let's click on calculate down here. You can see that it does give me the marginals. There's 63 as a margin, 39 as a margin, 61, 41. I guess it hadn't figured those. Oh, I guess it's from the previous one. I'm sorry. Hang on just a second. Now we've got, okay, 50 and 50. That's the marginal there. Then here's the other marginals that we had, 19, 22, 20, 25, and 14. But anyway, we get a chi-square here of 14.02. And then our degrees of freedom is 4. So that was the number of rows, which was 5, minus 1, times the number of columns, 5 minus 1, which would be 4, times the number of columns minus, and the number of rows minus 1, which would be 2 minus 1. So there's the chi-square value, and then this actually calculates a p-value here of 0.007, and we'll actually go back and pick up the video at that point where we're actually looking at that value. Sometimes you just use a table to look up this value instead of having the computer calculate it for you. Having the computer calculate it's the best way to do it. But what I found a lot of times is that it's good to go through these situations with paper and pencil, so it helps you to understand the other situations that are the actual situation better. So let's go through and see if this will play. If we go through and we look up degrees of freedom of 4 right here, then we're going to see that our chi-square value of 14.02 is somewhere between 0.01. Well, you know, you can't see that, can you? Okay, let me try this. Okay, now we're back here. So we got 4 degrees of freedom, and we go over to the 4 degrees of freedom to this point right here. Let me zoom in so that you can see that. Okay, and so we calculated 13.02. The table says that 13.277 is there are 14.02 is between these two values, 13.277 and 14.860. So our p-value is between 0.01 and 0.005. And this program calculated it to be 0.007. Okay? So that's how you can use that to get those values for you. Okay. Another interesting thing about the chi-square table, well, it's interesting to me, maybe it'll be interesting to you, is that the way that it's set up, that the degrees of freedom is about halfway between the 0.01 and the 0.90 value on the chart. Let's just look at some of these. 15 is about halfway between 8.5 and 22.307. If we add 8 and 22, we get 30. Half of that is going to give us about 15. Let's go down here. If we add up, zoom in just a little bit on this one to see. So you can see it's a little better. If we add up 20.6 and 40.8, and we're going to get 60 and some change, divide that by 2, and we're going to get a value of about 30. So you can see that works out. Now, one of the things that we have to watch out for on the chi-square is that we have to make sure that there are no expected values less than 5. Okay? Now, we're not saying observed. Okay? We're not saying observed here. We're saying expected values. So if we were to have a table that might, according to the notes I've made, I've gotten pretty close to the maximum on this video. So we'll back up a little bit and then come back with it on the fourth